Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to the panelists for joining us on this very important topic of sustainability in payments today. As I reflect back on the past couple of days and some of the keynotes we've heard, there's this underlying theme of sustainability that I've heard come through already. So I'm very excited that we have some dedicated time to spend on this topic today. As leading organizations are considering what the impact their business activities have on not just the environment, but also communities. What policies, strategies, and solutions best support sustainable goals? And how do we measure success? How can organizations collaborate to drive for meaningful, large-scale change? This panel today will explore how the payments ecosystem can take a lead in community impact, social justice, and environmental sustainability. Now, for the purposes of today, we will use the term sustainability that will generally mean meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations' ability to meet their own needs, while factoring in the underlying pillars of environment, social, and governance. So before we dive into some of our questions and our discussions, we'll do some introductions, and we'll start with Angie.
Great, thank you, Christina, and great to be here today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Lamarche, and I'm the head of Sustainable Finance Commercial Banking for HSBC, based here in Canada.
Thank you. Great to be here. I feel like I'm plied into this chair a little bit. It doesn't necessarily fit my size. So Wade Stazer, Chief Operating Officer for Meridian Credit Union. I lead our lines of business, our operations and payments teams across Ontario. Recently celebrated 25 years with our organization, and from the perspective that I bring is that I'm able to connect across the province with our consumers and small businesses and understand that. And as a credit union, we believe, first of all, we support 21, as credit unions, 21% of small business across the country. And so we believe there's a great opportunity to create opportunity.
Great, thank you.
And I'm Michael Torrance. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer at BMO Financial Group, and I oversee the bank's enterprise sustainability team. And I also oversee the bank's Climate Institute, which we started a couple of years ago to really enhance our engagement on that topic. So thank you for having this panel discussion on sustainability. It's great to be part of the Payments Canada community with this discussion.
Great, well thank you all for joining us. We've got some excellent expertise up here with us today, so we'll just dive right into my first question for each of you, and we'll start with Angie, is how are you able to make sustainability a top priority in your organization? And second to that, what advice would you have for any of the leaders here today who are trying to do the same?
So, with a European headquarter and a global footprint, sustainability is something that HSBC has been close to for well over a decade. When I think about our global commitments that came out, our original commitments around sustainable finance and really starting to work through our own sustainability journey, and then our increased commitments in 2020, committing to net zero in our own operations by 2030 and net zero within our finance emissions by 2050, really the term stakeholder comes to mind as a key pillar. And so whether it was activists within the different geographies where we have headquarters, our regulators starting to take an increasing interest, our customers being increasingly interested to understand what the bank was doing in sustainability, and our employees as well playing a really key role there. Across the board, from our stakeholder community, we really heard an interest to understand what the bank was doing and where we had the opportunity to really help to be a transformational agent within the overall global transformation to a sustainable future. The other two pillars I would really highlight were our risk. And so clearly when we're looking from a credit risk perspective, looking at natural disasters across the world, looking at the transition of the economy, there's an inherent credit risk as well as climate risk that the bank needed to assess and be cognizant of in where the future development was going. And then finally, opportunity certainly played a key role as well. We heard a lot about really exciting innovation that's happening today, and obviously the bank is keen to be supporting our customers across the world, capture that opportunity and really be a part of driving the world to a more sustainable future. So for those leaders in the room who haven't started on their own journeys yet, my big piece of advice is really to start thinking about your key stakeholders, those key sustainability metrics that are most material based on your own organizations and where you're able to have the greatest impact and influence.
Great, thank you. Wade?
Thank you. Well, I mean, first and foremost, Meridian is a purpose-driven organization that's committed to people, planet, and community. And we've always been able to be focused there as a credit union supporting our clients in the communities that we work in. We were actually formed by farmers in Niagara who couldn't get access to credit, so a really early example of an equity-deserving group. So, you know, it's in our DNA, and we believe it's just really good business to do this. So, you know, we make sure we play an active role in the community. We treat our customers, our employees, our suppliers equitably and with respect. These are the core values that are ingrained in our culture. And for us, the impact of impact in ESG is clear, and our employees tell us so. So, you know, in addition to what I would suggest is top-tier engagement, employee engagement, 88% of our employees say that they're proud to work at our organization. 90% say, I feel good about the ways the company contributes to the community. 89%, I believe that this company acts responsibly in our business dealings. And lastly, 85% say that they feel that the work they do is meaningful. So it's about walking the walk for us as an organization consistent with who we are. We've just launched our new, what we're calling Meridian for Good enterprise strategy, which really aims to serve all members of society and ensure that we're addressing and helping to positively impact a number of broad spectrum of social and environmental issues, including Indigenous reconciliation, affordable housing, climate change, and the transition to a cleaner economy. You know, we're putting purpose into action by helping all people, including equity-deserving groups, get access to the money and the advice that they need so that they can be financially confident and to plan for a better future that's clean, resilient, and diverse. So our clients also tell us that this is resonating, and so it's really important that you have relevancy with who you're serving. We recently had what we called our Big Impact contest, which highlighted small businesses across the province that were making a social impact. And we received over 1,500 applications for there, and significant highlights for those businesses and our organization. So in summary, if you're in this room and you truly believe that impact in ESG is important, and I would suggest to you if you don't, then you have a relevancy issue moving forward when we talk about where we're headed as a society, then you need to ensure there's alignment with your strategy, your culture, your brand, up, down, across, what you celebrate, who you promote, who you hire, and you know, that will ensure that you don't have any what I call say-do gaps in your organization.
That's great, thank you. It sounds like this is far more driven from a ground-up desire rather than a compliance and regulatory-driven initiative, which is really wonderful to hear. Michael, how are things at BMO?
Yeah, I mean, in my observation, I mean, one of the things that has changed is the operating context of the financial sector, and that has certainly been a major catalyst, I think, for making this a priority. You know, 5 years ago, I would say sustainability was a topic that was viewed as a pretty niche subject. It was nice to have, wasn't really tied to core business processes. But in the last 5 years, we've seen that really fundamentally change. This is tied into priority areas of our biggest investors. It's tied into the focus of regulatory activity. Even if that might not be a primary driver, it's still a really important one. We're seeing it as a driver of commercial opportunity. So that context has made it a top priority just inherently. And then I think if you're in this space and you're trying to make it a priority for your organization, recognizing that that's all happening, there's kind of two paths you can go down. One is that the senior leadership of your business and your risk functions, finance, governance, your board, your executive suite are going to be really scared by that change. Or you can, as a sustainability professional within the organization, help channel that into a coherent strategy and recognize the opportunity around it. So that's really been my priority, has been to try to educate, so again, and build relationships with groups within risk, within finance, within our governance areas, to understand what is happening, what it means for us, and then to help them kind of discern the signal from the noise and chart a course forward. And we've found that there's been a lot of, I think, buy-in to this business case to be a high performer around sustainability. And so the other aspect of that, I think, is top-level commitment, that I think if you're really going to excel, you have to have senior leadership have that buy-in, demonstrate top-level commitment, and that's going to be easiest to achieve if they understand the business case and the tie-in to core business areas. And so that's been the challenge, I would say, over the last several years. But I think we're seeing it in our organization and across the sector. This is becoming more and more integrated into how we do business every day.
Absolutely, and I'm just going to draw on that a little, and anyone can answer this. I'm curious, as you're integrating this through the organization, and I do believe it's got to be top-down and embedded in your decision-making and your culture, have you experienced any resistance at any level when you're trying to advocate for this across your organizations, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and even though it's very strongly, embedded into our DNA, I won't say that it may be resistance, but it's needing to understand the why. And so sometimes, we as senior leaders, we forget to, ensure that we're meeting our people where they are and providing them not just the how, but here's the why, and making sure that you're really crystal clear on your expectations.
That's great. I think it's not just other colleagues within the organization either. It's clients, right? And I think it's coming from a place of empathy. We look across the Canadian economy. There are very different sectors that are facing very different impacts from this transition. And so meeting customers where they are, being a collaborative partner to help them identify the best strategy to be successful into the future, and to work with them at their pace, I think is a really key part of the conversation as well.
Right, thanks.
What I've found is there's a lot of competing priorities. There's a lot of things going on, especially nowadays. And there's also a very rapid pace of change. So helping people to prioritize, again, helping to communicate a business case, and then taking first things first and working to slowly make change over time, that I found has been necessary to not lose people along the way, or to give the impression or to have the view that this is not actually tied into real core business drivers. So always keeping that connection, I think, gets the best buy-in.
Great, thank you. We are at a payments conference, so I'm going to have more of a specific payments question for everyone. So sustainability crosses all industries, all sectors. So I'd like your thoughts on where do you see the biggest opportunity to advance sustainability, particularly in payments?
I could start.
Go ahead, yeah.
So to me, I think for any business, kind of going back to this theme of sustainability being part of core business processes and opportunity, I think the way to think about it for a payments company or any financial firm is as how do you add value as part of a value chain? So you got to think that sustainability now matters across an entire value chain. Companies they need to think about what sustainability means in their supply chain, what it means in their own operations, what it means for how they engage with their customers and provide services. So what are the risks that your role in the payments ecosystem creates from a sustainability perspective? There could be things like emissions associated with the digital technology that we talked about. It could be other characteristics that might be of importance to your main stakeholders. And then there's also business opportunities. So the opening speech I thought was fascinating about, there's a business competitive advantage for good sustainability performance. It could be a differentiator that consumers make decisions on. Well, what kind of data and information and knowledge are you acquiring in the payments context that is going to help with carbon quantification and tracking, or to be able to provide value-add services to your customers? There's a lot that could be done. And I think really, actually, in this sector, it's really a lot about opportunity, probably a lot more than risk, although that might also be part of it.
Great, thank you. Wade?
Yeah, I think, and again, we're in a very different, I'm the little guy here, right, significantly, and by far not a payments expert per se, as my colleagues would be. But, I would say that for us as a credit union, we think there's great opportunity to collaborate with our credit union partners across the province to ensure that, that we are bringing each one along and ensuring that we're sharing insights and experience so that we can build an exceptional member experience for the clients that we serve. I think when thinking about the broader ecosystem, it won't surprise you that access is really important for someone that's coming from our perspective. And we think that it's really important to provide that access to ensure that we're going to strengthen and grow our local economies as well as national economies. And I believe that we boost innovation when we do that. But it also means putting the customer at the center of the work that we're doing, and with specific opportunity, I think right now is to look at our equity deserving groups and how they access our payment systems, whether that's Indigenous, new to Canada, Black-owned business, female entrepreneurs. And I think it goes without saying that if you're not investing in DEI/BR in your own organizations as well, then you're missing something, and that would be a big something in my opinion. And in broader research, right? Diverse workforces provide the opportunity for a more engaged, creative, innovative workforce, and these individuals can actually help you to identify the challenges within those groups and access to the systems. I think the other piece is around education and trust, and I'll use a specific example for us. We try to ensure that our members and customer feedback is integrated into our approach, but it's hard. We have a very vocal group, I'll call, from a seniors perspective, that that are very vocal around face-to-face, cash-in-hand transactions, and so that's something that we are constantly trying to help and educate and bring along. And we know over COVID that they as a group learned to service digitally, and so now we want to make sure that they're not giving back those gains that they've experienced by learning to service digitally, because every time they come into a branch, they put themselves at risk, and for illness and fall and all of those other pieces. So I think real tangible, things that impact Canadians on a day-to-day basis. I think the other piece is around trust, of course, and if you're reading now around fraud and seniors fraud, and I think it's really important for us as financial institutions to ensure that we maintain the trust and integrity of that system. So, when a senior falls prey or there's an account takeover and those customers aren't whole, then it's hard to get them back to service digitally and to trust again. So I think it's really important that that we're educating and ensuring that our customers feel safe in that space.
That's great, thank you. Angie.
So picking up on what Wade was just saying, as well as some of Miguel's comments in the previous session, I think the focus on access, on equity deserving groups, is a critical part of this. Obviously, you can reduce a footprint by removing checks and cash from the system, but there's realities around who loses access and who loses economic independence as a result. And so these decisions need to be taken mindfully. I also think when we look at collaboration in that same vein, there's a need to think beyond maybe the traditional payments players and financial institutions and the role that telecommunications firms have to play in ensuring that there's accessible, that there's just access to internet and high quality, high speed access in a lot of these more vulnerable areas in particular. Picking up on something Michael was saying, I think that there's a real opportunity for payments to be a delivery mechanism for sustainability and for advancement in sustainability, particularly when we look at data and the global footprint of supply chains today. So HSBC completed some research with BCG back in 2021 that reflected of the estimated 100 to 125 trillion that it's going to cost to achieve just net zero 2050, let alone the other sustainability priorities. Nearly half of that capital is required by small and medium businesses globally. And so when you think about, how can major organizations, whether they're in the payment system or whether they're your customers, how can those organizations support their supply chain, support smaller players within the global economy, to embed sustainability as a key priority, to see the value in collecting that data and to make it as low friction as possible, to share that data as needed to connect global supply chains, to help small organizations really tap into global opportunity. I think an incredible opportunity for the payment ecosystem to be a facilitator of a lot of that data flow. And for anyone who's maybe feeling overwhelmed about tackling new metrics, new areas, I would just really encourage everybody to remember that all the work that's been done around KYC, all the work that was done to help manage and mitigate financial crime, it falls into that sustainability umbrella as well. So it's different metrics, different data that needs to get fed through, but really I think the very similar channels to what we've built before, what we've become very comfortable with over a short period of time previously. So I'm hugely optimistic that the payments community can play a really critical role in helping to advance sustainability globally.
Great, thank you for that. My final question for each of you is I'm looking for an action out of each of you. So what's one action that everyone here today can do to advance sustainability in the payments ecosystem? So Angie, I'll start with you.
I think really, if you don't know what your organization is doing today, find out. If you're underwhelmed by the answer, inquire why more isn't happening. My assumption is actually that most folks will be pleasantly surprised by how much work is already going on. A really consistent theme we see with clients is that there's just an incredible amount of work being done in sustainability, whether it's your procurement team, your finance team, your sustainability team, that's been really integrating a lot of this work for quite some time. It just hasn't necessarily been pulled together into a single report or a single team or a consistent way for folks to access that data. So really encourage all of you to be curious about what's going on within your own organizations. For those of you that are customer facing, be curious about what's going on with your customers. Inquire about where they're getting stuck on the journey and where could payments potentially help to be a solution. As was referenced in the opening keynote, there's some incredible work being done by different FIs in the card system to quantify emissions and to help consumers better understand what their footprint is, that idea of what an individual carbon footprint is and how we can work to reduce our own impact within our communities. So I think there's a huge amount of learning that folks can do out of the gate to understand what's already being done. And then to ask that question of what more can we do and how can I be a key part of the collaboration to drive it forward? Because I think you've heard it here kind of loud and clear with the innovation mandate, with the technological advancement mandate. Collaboration is the way that we're going to advance a lot of these key priorities, and sustainability isn't any different.
I think what is a really interesting point that I'm picking up on is I'm guessing a lot of organizations are already being very active in the space of sustainability and likely not pulling it all together in a comprehensive or formalized manner to report out. So I think it's a great piece of advice to, if you don't know what your organization is doing, go out and ask, and you may be the catalyst for change within your organization to bring some of that formal reporting out towards the ecosystem. Wade?
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of where I was going to go, and I think the other piece to state, but don't always hear a lot about putting the customer at the center, right? So we talk about what we need and what regulators need and what government needs, but what does the consumer need? And so if you actually flip it around and start from the bottom, I think it'll become that much more clear why you need to invest in sustainability and ESG, why you need to ensure that there's strategic alignment through your organization, that you're talking to your customers about what's important to them and the challenges that they're having, and then you're measuring the impact, right? Because if there's no line of sight to how you are helping to move ESG forward and sustainability forward, then your organization is not going to be moving forward. So measure and celebrate that.
Great, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so for me, I would recommend don't forget the G in ESG, because there's probably everybody in this room, there's some aspect of your job that's going to really focus on the governance around payments. And as by way of anecdote, BMO does a podcast, Sustainability Leaders, we call it, and I had the opportunity to interview a member of our ESG research team about the SVB failure. And there was a lot of criticism while they were too ESG focused. His take on it was actually they weren't enough ESG focused because you're forgetting the G, that good governance is actually a really critical aspect of sustainability. And I think the payments ecosystem and infrastructure, all the things that we heard about already today, a lot of it is about how do we manage with good governance, prevent fraud, how do we have transparency and accountability. All of those things are actually critical to the foundation of trust, which nowadays we're seeing is really the core, not only to the business being viable financially, but also sustainability over the long run.
That's a really great point. I think we tend to over-rotate sometimes on the E and the S and forget the importance of the G. Thank you for bringing that back to the center. So we're coming up to time, but we have an exciting opportunity here to have a Q&A with our panelists today. We're not going to do it here in this room, but we are asking that if you would like to engage in some Q&A and ask our experts some questions, we're going to move upstairs to the Idea Exchange, which is in room 201, where we can take your questions. So it's been years of virtual conference, and we really want to encourage everyone to take advantage of the opportunity to meet in person and ask some great questions. So again, that's upstairs in room 201. We're going to take a few moments to get there. We'll be starting at 12:15, so you have a chance to grab a bite to eat and make your way up there. And thank you to each of you for your wonderful insights and joining me today.